Good afternoon, this is Beatriz Flores, and today I would like to tackle on communism in Europe. Where did the word communism came from? Communism came from the Old French commune, which means public, free, and from the Latin word isme, meaning implying a practice, a system, or a doctrine. What is communism? Communism is the collective ownership where all means of manufacturing and production are equally owned by the state. Its goal is to have a classless, moneyless, and stateless society. The most notable fact would be that private ownership is abolished, as Karl Marx had noted. What do I mean by stateless? As I said, everything belongs to the state. In this case, as the state is the people. The government will slowly remove its grip from the people until the state is capable of running on its own, thus creating a utopia, and that process would be socialism. If communism is when there shouldn't be money or ownership in general, everyone should work as much as they need, as much as they can, and the people are on their own. Socialism, on the other hand, is almost the same, but instead of the people deciding and functioning on their own, the democratic government still has the control over the means of production rather than having private ownership. Origin of communism. How did it start? German philosophers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels co-wrote the Communist Manifesto in Das Kapital, wherein they developed the idea of abolishing private property altogether and having a state that has equality among its citizens. They founded this idea through their experiences in London when they saw how the rich became richer and the poor became poorer. Abuse in the labor industry was rampant. Poverty-stricken people have no means of climbing up the ladder, thus creating a greater gap among social class. Marx and Engels' development of the idea paved the way for the 20th century communism. The Russian Revolution. In Russia, the Tsar controlled Russia and agriculture was the main economic force of the nation. Poverty was rampant while a handful of elites enjoyed money and luxurious life in the state. But as the war broke out in the early 20th century, Russia suffered a fate of demoralizing losses. Coupled with violence from Tsar Nicholas II, the events prompted revolts from the revolutionary groups, rejecting rule by the elites, instead encourages rule of the working class. The most notable would be the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin was born to highly educated and cultured parents. He studied in Kazan University but was expelled. During this period he became an avid reader of Marx's Das Kapital, becoming a Marxist, and later finished to be top of his class, becoming a public defender in the next years. Here he met Georgy Plekhanov and they started a revolutionary group. He was exiled to Siberia but escaped to make sure that Tsarism came to an end. During the World War I, after experiencing the chaos war has brought upon them, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, headed the October Revolution or Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, with the goal of abolishing monarchical rule in Russia. The Bolshevik won the revolution and began to apply the Marxist principles in the state. They established their base at Moscow and rebranded the Russian SFA Republic into the now known USSR. The Union of Socialist Soviet Republic comprises of Russia, Belarusia, Ukraine, and the Transcaucasian Federation, divided in 1936 into Georgian, Azerbaijan, and Armenian republics. The Soviet industry was owned and managed by the state, and agricultural land was divided into state-run collective farms. The USSR was the first communist state in the world. Though, in ideology, there wasn't really a communist state ever. As I said before, for it to qualify as a communist state in both ideology and economics, it should be stateless, moneyless, and classless. Furthermore, the ideology that was used Furthermore, the ideology that was used in running the USSR and Russia was Marxism-Leninism, or Leninism for short. It is a mix of Marxism and Leninism ideology. The ideology Leninism was an adaptation of Marxism developed by Vladimir Lenin, but here, instead of abolishing the state as Marxism, in Leninism, everybody is equal, but they need a group of leaders to guide them. Lenin thought that Marx's general vision was impractical. He can't wait for the people to become enlightened. from the tyranny of the bourgeoisie, thus creating a revolutionary movement. After Lenin, Joseph Stalin took over the seat as premier. He was also known to be a manipulative person, manipulating Lenin into giving him a high seat in the government. He was also known as the Man of Steel because he was depicted as violent and was convicted of robberies to fund the Revolutionary Party. In Stalin's era, he made the greatest man-made famine, the famine genocide in Ukraine, also known as the Ukrainian Genocide or Holodomor, in 1932 to 33, killing millions of Ukrainians from starvation in the countryside. It was this time when he wanted to rapidly change the nation to create a totally communist economy, replacing small farms with state-run collectives, and punish independence-minded Ukrainians who posed a threat to his totalitarian authority. In 1939, Stalin made a deal with Hitler and Germany, a non-aggression pact, where any of the states could not attack one another. But the pact didn't last long when Germany attacked Poland, an allied country of Russia. This event sparked the start of World War II. In 1945, Stalin, Truman of US, and Churchill from Britain have formed and created an ELTA and Potsdam Conference to bring down Nazi forces in Europe and Japanese invasion. But with the help of atomic bombs, the Allies did not need the help of the Soviet Union in defeating Japan. Stalin felt betrayed, and the rivalry between capitalism and communism ignited. He grew more suspicious and paranoid of the West, thus starting the Cold War. Europe after World War II. In the Cold War, Germany was divided in Eastern and Western Germany, USSR, the Eastern, and Allies of the Western. As you can see in the picture, the Eastern is the form of the blue, and the Western bloc is the USSR, and the white one is the Iron Curtain, which divides the two. It is a neutral place within the war. USSR also took control of Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. Europe was in much need of financial aid due to all the roads, bridges, and buildings and more that had been destroyed in the fighting. The US offered the aid in the form of Marshall Plan to help Europe recover. The Cold War was an ongoing political rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union and the respective allies that developed after World War II. It is a nuclear stalemate between superstates. Each possessed weapons of mass destruction and was capable of annihilating one another. In 1958 to 62, the United States and the Soviet Union began developing intercontinental ballistic missiles, and in 1962, the Soviets began secretly installing missiles in Cuba that could be used to launch nuclear attacks in the US cities. This sparked the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, a confrontational that brought the two superpowers to the brink of war before an agreement was reached to withdraw the missiles. The two superpowers soon signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963, which banned the above-ground nuclear weapon testing. Fall of the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev assumed the leadership of the USSR. He wanted to change the Stalinist Russia into a democratic form. He introduced two policies, glasnost, freedom from Stalinist repression, and perestroika. Rationing, shortages, and endless queuing for scarce goods seemed to be the only result of Gorbachev's policies. Gorbachev believed that a better Soviet economy depended on a better relationship with the rest of the world. Allied countries and countries under USSR are one by one declaring independence from the Union. While Gorbachev was allying with the rest of the world, Boris Yeltsin gained popularity from the people that wants to be free from the Union. And on Christmas Day 1991, Gorbachev resigned and declared dissolution of the USSR.